Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight, welcoming you to this week's Talking News. Amongst the usual flurry of stuffing envelopes and sorting out the newsletter, this week we managed to get out as a team for a quick lunch in Newport. 3 new apprentices who have joined us: Amy, who works with Debbie in the shop, Martin, who works with Chris in the office, and Liberty, who mans our reception desk here at Millbrook House. We did feel like we needed to catch up to make sure everybody had actually met. Where people do work part-time, and with obvious COVID restrictions still in place, it was really nice for everybody to actually finally meet. Enclosed in the newsletter is our reopening plans for the 21st of July, of course, subject to Boris. This week we have been sorting out the minibus and everything ready for our big reopening. Susan certainly has been busy sorting everything out. Please note, within the newsletter is information on the Royal Victoria Yacht Club Open Day on Saturday the 10th of July. We do have 4 spaces still available, and therefore if you would like to come along, please do not hesitate to contact the office on 522205 and we can book you a place. Transport and sighted guides will be provided for everyone. Also contained in the newsletter is a theatre trip planned for November this year. Obviously it will be subject to COVID guidelines at the time, but currently we have reserved some places. So information is in the newsletter, and if you'd like to join us again, please just contact Susan. So just finally, a reminder, you can always listen to the newsletter by scanning the QR code on the front with any smartphone. You can listen to it through our telephone service on 01983 475547, or you can listen to it on Alexa. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Lisa.
This is an article from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Terry. Mental health survey launches for young people on Isle of Wight. Young people on the Isle of Wight are being asked about their mental health as part of an island-wide project to understand their mental health needs and experiences. From Thursday, the Isle of Wight Youth Trust will launch the survey following on from the successful 2017 and 2019 Island Youth Mental Health Censuses. Over 7,000 responses were received. As a result, the Youth Trust is now asking young islanders to complete the 2021 Island Youth Mental Health Census. The census provides a vital opportunity for young people to have their voices heard and shape the direction of the services that support them. Youth Trust Advocacy and Development Manager Felicity Radak said, "As a proudly youth-led organisation, we at the Youth Trust feel strongly that young people should be setting the agenda for the services that they may access. We want to hear directly from our young people what are their experiences and where are the gaps in meeting their needs. Through our census, we are asking young islanders to share their views and help us make sure that we are delivering the best services possible. We have built upon our previous surveys, which were co-designed with young people, to ensure we get a snapshot of young people's mental health at this moment in time. In addition to asking about general well-being, we are asking some hard-hitting questions about experiences with suicide, self-harm, relationships, and eating habits. We are currently seeing an increase in demand for our services, with over 100 young people reaching out for support each month. We know that many of the reasons that young people seek support remain the same, but we also know that the past year has been unlike any other. Now, more than ever, young people's voices need to be heard." She added, "This is a community effort. We have had input in designing this survey from young people, schools, public health, and a range of professionals. We will also have support from other services through the Mental Health Support Team Collaborative Project to deliver the census. Schools will be encouraging students to take part, and public health will be supporting with analysis of the data. Whilst we are reaching a lot of young people in schools, it is harder to reach those who aren't currently attending school, those who are over 18, and those who may have experience of their voice being overlooked. To include as many young people as possible, we are offering the chance to win one of 2 Amazon vouchers for anyone completing the census online, and would encourage all under 25s to get involved. Young Islanders can anonymously complete the census online at www.iowyouthtrust, all one word and all lowercase of course, .co.uk/census, CENSUS. The Youth Trust will be publicly releasing findings from this census later in the year.
Hello, this is Sue reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Isle of Wight firefighter issues warning message about fires in the open. The fires can spread quicker than you can run. That is the stark reminder for anyone on the Isle of Wight considering lighting a fire in the open. According to Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Services, HIWFRS, there has been a significant rise in the number of fires in the open they have responded to this year. From January this year to May, the fire service attended 427 open fires across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Services say fires in the open can spread from cigarettes, bonfires or barbecues and cause a massive impact on properties, the local area, woodland and wildlife. Andy Weeks, Group Commander for Portsmouth, Havant and East Hampshire Group with Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, explained, "We have experienced some relatively dry conditions and it doesn't have to be just hot for fires in the open to spread. If we get a fairly dry easterly wind that will dry the fuels out on the ground and help the fire to develop and grow, if a wildfire gets going, the fire can travel quicker than you can run." An unattended bonfire in Totland earlier this year led to crews from Freshwater tackling the blaze with a water cannon for an hour after it spread to woodland and a nearby outbuilding. At the same time, crews from Ryde were dealing with a large grassland are alight, therefore putting a strain on the island's resources. Andy explained the damage these fires can cause. He said, "A lot of these areas have ground nesting birds or plants that are very specific to the area, so you might be on a site of special scientific interest. So these fires are devastating and will take out anything in its path." Andy concluded, "Enjoy the local areas, but enjoy them safely and responsibly. Our advice is don't barbecue, take pre-prepared food with you, don't burn stuff off, you can take it to household waste recycling. Make sure if you are smoking you also dispose of your cigarettes properly. Should you happen to come across a fire in the open, by all means call 999. He said the app What 3 Words is excellent for the firefighters to locate you. If you are caught deliberately setting fire to anything, you will face criminal charges.
This is an article from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Terry. Isle of Wight Festival's John Giddings says, "Over my dead body will it not happen." The man behind the Isle of Wight Festival has said the event will be going ahead this year. The music event was cancelled last year and moved to September this year because of the coronavirus pandemic. Speaking to Audio Media International, John Giddings has assured music fans that the festival will be happening. John has also expressed his anger and dismay at the lack of financial support from the government for the live music and entertainment industry. He said, "The bottom line is we're being treated like second-class citizens. They're allowing the Grand Prix, the tennis, the football, but all those events are financed by TV income. The audience is peripheral. We can only do shows if we can sell tickets to pay for the costs, but we're last in the queue. We have to beg to have test events, which is pathetic. There is still no word on the long-awaited government-backed COVID insurance scheme that would allow more events to gamble on taking place. But John said the Seaclose Park event backed by Live Nation will go ahead regardless. He continued, "Over my dead body will it not occur, and I don't intend dying in the near future, believe you me. We are prepared to take the risk. You should phone me in October to see if I'm bankrupt or not." John says it costs £10 million to stage his festival, and added that he would be happy to implement vaccine passports, testing programs and other protocols if that's what it takes to allow events to go ahead. John added, "I'm worried about next year because there's a knock-on effect where there's going to be twice as many shows as normal because everything's moved. There's going to be 10 to 12 stadium tours in June, July, and more festivals than you've had hot dinners, although some of them will have bitten the dust because they can't take the risk anymore. Are people going to buy enough tickets to keep the industry alive when there's twice as much to go and see? I don't know the answer. I just know how busy next year is."
This is Alison, reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Tourism on track? Culture Secretary's Isle of Wight tourism trip. As Isle of Wight Radio previously reported, Oliver Dowden paid a visit to the island on Thursday. He met with Visit Isle of Wight boss Will Miles and Isle of Wight MP Bob Seeley to discuss all things tourism. Top of the agenda was how tourism is bouncing back on the island after the COVID-19 pandemic. Pictures posted by Tapnell Farm also show the Secretary of State meeting with owners Tom Turney and Tom Honeyman Brown. The Secretary of State said, "I fully understand the challenges the sector has faced over the last year and am highly supportive of the tourism and hospitality industry on the island and further afield at present. I firmly believe and hope that with the strong and innovative tourism products that you have on the island and the passion shown by those involved, you will have a busy and profitable season." The Isle of Wight MP, Bob Seeley, said he was looking forward to working with the Secretary of State to further develop the tourism offer here. Tourism on the Isle of Wight has an economic impact of nearly £500 million and is one of the major employers here, with visitors spending over £330 million each year. I will endeavour to work with Mr Dowden to support the island tourism and hospitality industry now and in the future, aiding the great efforts already in place here on the Isle of Wight. Right now, the hospitality sector needs our support, not just on the island but nationwide. Together with Visit Isle of Wight, the Isle of Wight Council, Visit Britain and Mr Dowden, we look to support and promote this sector as a great industry to start a successful career. Visit Isle of Wight is currently working to address the staffing shortages in the hospitality sector. Managing Director Will Miles said it was vital that this and other issues were addressed. I ensured Mr Dowden understood the importance of the visitor economy on the island and the issues that it was facing in both the short and longer term, including current staffing shortages. He was very well briefed and has even been here previously with his family as a tourist. It is visits like this that gets our message straight to the heart of government. Will Miles said, "Thanks to everyone involved in this visit, Mr Dowden left with a very positive grasp of what we do here. Sent off with a basket of White Mark Island produce and garlic farm items to enjoy. He was very appreciative."
This is an article from the Island Echo, read by Den. Animal abusers could face a sentence of 5 years in prison
as new Act comes into effect. People who abuse animals can now face a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison as the Animal Welfare Sentencing Act comes into effect. The landmark legislation kicks in after completing its final government stage and passing into law in April 2021. After years of campaigning, the RSPCA, the principal investigator of animal neglect, cruelty and serious organised animal crime in England and Wales, is celebrating this milestone. RSPCA Chief Executive Chris Sherwood said, "This is a landmark day for animals and animal welfare in England and Wales. For almost 200 years, the RSPCA has been investigating animal cruelty and rescuing, rehabilitating and rehoming animals. While we've seen vast changes in the way we keep animals during that time, as well as huge advances in legislation to better protect animal welfare, our sentences for animal abusers have long been letting our animals down. We're absolutely thrilled now that we've reached this milestone moment and that courts will now have more flexibility to hand out sentences that better reflect the severity of the crimes they are dealing with. And we hope the Animal Welfare Sentencing Act will act as a greater deterrent and help us cancel out cruelty once and for all." The Animal Welfare Sentencing Act 2021 increases the maximum sentencing under the Animal Welfare Act 2006 from 6 months to 5 years for cruelty and fighting offences. It comes into effect in both England and Wales on the same day. The new law brings us in line with Scotland and Northern Ireland, where convicted animal abusers can be jailed for up to 5 years. Chris added, "For 5 years, those responsible for the most horrific, violent and unimaginable cruelty to animals have been punished with just a few short months in prison, less than they might get for fly tipping. In recent weeks, our officers have been called out to investigate shocking cases. For example, dogs who have been beaten to death and dumped on the side of the road like rubbish, horses left with hooves so overgrown they can't walk, and pets who have starved to death in filthy conditions. At least going forward, our courts will be able to hand out sentences in animal cruelty cases that truly reflect the severity of the crimes." In December of last year, Island Echo reported on a serious case of animal cruelty which resulted in a cat having its leg surgically amputated after receiving a blunt force trauma, leading to the belief that it had been deliberately stamped on. In 2017, the UK government pledged to reform the maximum sentence for those prosecuted under the Animal Welfare Act, receiving support from cross-party politicians. This bill was brought forward by MP Chris Loder as a private member's bill in June 2019. Over the last 3 years, the RSPCA has secured 3,753 convictions in the courts in England and Wales, and 156 individuals received immediate prison terms. In the past 3 years, over 130 offenders successfully prosecuted by the RSPCA received prison sentences of 6 weeks or more for cruelty offences, and in some cases, magistrates specifically stated they would have received longer prison sentences if they had been available.
This is an article from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Terry. Inspections and upgrades of Isle of Wight walls and bridges underway. A programme of works to inspect and upgrade hundreds of retaining walls, bridges and parapets across the island is underway. Under the programme, agreed by the Isle of Wight Council and Island Roads, over 250 walls and a number of parapets and bridges will be inspected. From these surveys, a course of action will be decided to ensure each is maintained to the standards required by the Highways PFI contract. The programme, which will last until April 2023, is already underway, with the initial focus on 90 structures, 57 in Ventnor, which are deemed to be the highest priority. In each of these cases, the walls will be subject to an agreed strategy involving an inspection and then agreement over any required strengthening works needed. Island Road's Service Director, Steve Ashman, said, "This is a comprehensive programme of additional work, often involving specialist structural engineers and equipment, which represents a significant investment in the structures to help ensure they continue to support the highway network for years to come. Some of the work may well be fairly major in scope, and we will be sure to keep the local community informed of traffic management that may be necessary so we can carry out this work in the coming months. As always, we will look to minimise disruption to residents and road users." Councillor Phil Jordan, Isle of Wight Council Cabinet Member for Transport and Infrastructure, said, "This is welcome investment in our bridges and retaining walls across the island, but they are also essential works that have to be undertaken at this time. Not only are they an important part of keeping the network safe, in places like Ventnor they also help form and preserve the character of the area, which is another good reason why it's important to have an effective rolling programme of inspection and repair." In some locations, Island Roads has previously introduced enhancements that offer habitat to solitary bees and the Ventnor's wall lizards, and these features will be considered where appropriate in the forthcoming work. Island Roads says residents most affected by the programme will be contacted in advance of work taking place, while any necessary traffic arrangements will also be publicised.
This is Alison, reading from On the Wight. Removal of ancient woodland near Seagrove Bay under investigation. The owners say the work was carried out under approved plans and that the site had become degraded over time with a number of sycamores. Seaview residents are in uproar after ancient woodland was cut back to make way for a new property. The matter is now under investigation. An area of woodland on Pier Road looking out to Seagrove Bay has, according to residents, been decimated and stripped bare, although a woodland management plan was approved for the site. The site has been protected by tree orders from 1993, but applicants, Mr and Mrs Simon Edwards, received approval by the Isle of Wight Council in March 2020 to selectively thin woodland by 20% over a period of 10 years. A felling licence from the Forestry Commission was also obtained, defining the operation would not fell 30% of the total number of trees or remove more than 30% of the original canopy. Residents, however, say it appears to them as if almost 80% of trees were removed over a 5-week period in the autumn. In objections submitted to the latest planning application for the demolition of garages and the building of a 3-storey 5-bed house on the site, several Pier Road residents and some former residents have laid out their concerns. It appears the applicant has wantonly, immorally and arrogantly exploited a loophole in planning law by felling a considerable amount of timber in contravention of the Woodland Management Plan. The so-called mitigation does not compensate for the serious loss of wildlife habitat. Pictures submitted by neighbours show what they call the ongoing destruction of red squirrel habitat, which they fear has exceeded that permitted, and more could be lost with the construction of the house. The Isle of Wight Council said the planning authority is currently investigating the removal of trees at the site. Councillor Paul Fuller, Cabinet Member for Planning and Housing, said, "The potential loss of protected trees is always a matter of real concern. As Cabinet Member, I am in full support of this matter being investigated and appropriate action being pursued." The council said, as both cases were live, it was unable to comment further. Applicant Mr Edwards responded to concerns raised via the council's planning register, saying the work was carried out under the approved plans and the site had become somewhat degraded over time, with a number of sycamores identified as being dangerous. He said, "We, as new owners, wish to halt the further decline and improve this woodland's biodiversity and resilience by reducing the threats of over-dominance of sycamore and non-native ground layer plants. We have therefore taken steps to improve the diversity of the future canopy species and encourage wildlife." Mr Edwards said 100 trees, 150 shrubs and 3,000 woodland spring bulbs had been planted as a response to the removal. Responding to the application, the council's tree officer, Jerry Willis, and the Woodland Trust both raised concerns with the application, saying it goes against the National Planning Policy Framework, which would result in the loss of deterioration of irreplaceable habitats and should be refused. With the removal of the trees and the potential building of the house, residents also fear the stability of land has now been compromised. One said, "Having had to underpin once, after a rotational slip across Seagrove Bay in 2003, and contribute a significant financial amount to installing a private deep curtain drain in the road to take away the runoff water from the woods to protect our house, I am now horrified at the prospect of the damage that could ensue from the approval and implementation of the proposal." A ground stability report provided as part of the planning documents said the wood frame house would be built within the footprint of the existing structures, and although it should be considered as a development on a potentially unstable site, the proposed development could be achieved while not increasing the risk of instability on the site.
Hello, this is Sue reading an article from Island Echo. It all comes full circle. Bembridge Little Theatres Club return hailed as a great success. Bembridge Little Theatre Club is to be warmly congratulated on 2 counts. First, for their sheer persistence in getting a play onto the stage that was originally scheduled for over a year ago. And second, for making that play so well worth coming to see, as the laughter in the audience confirmed. Many plays billed as comedic drama have either lots of comedy or a good drama, rarely both. Full Circle manages to balance the comedy and an edge-of-the-seat drama to great effect, and the skillful directing and character acting brings out the best of both elements. If it's drama, you want the open rivalry between the 2 main characters, Biker and Rebel Gran, Dee, Marty Kane, and the haughty Millie, Glenys Lloyd Williams, very quickly develops what could in other hands have been comedic caricature into dark hints of hidden secrets from their shared past. Who was Jack? Why did Dee give birth in Carlisle? Both assert that the other one knows what she did, but their respective son and daughter, married to each other, are as puzzled as the audience. There are dramatic tensions too in Brian and Linda's marriage, especially on the run up to their only daughter's wedding. Fussy Linda, Jane Robert, is determined to get every detail absolutely right and resents any attempt by her well-meaning husband, played by John Hammond, with great comedic timing to lighten the atmosphere, although his comment that she is trying to give Nicola the wedding she herself would have wanted rings true. If you are there for the comedy, look no further in an attempt to discover the secrets their mothers are keeping. Brian enlists the help of their next-door neighbour, Wills. Although not a major role, John Abraham as Wills is in grave danger of stealing the show. I'm not sure which is more flamboyant, his gestures or his clothes. Having admitted his name is really Malcolm, but I loved Princess Di, Wills takes on the investigation. Alice Burton-Jones is perfect as bride-to-be Nicola, trying to deal with her father's concerns that she is making a mistake in getting married at all. Her mother's over-the-top wedding arrangements, which of course all go hilariously wrong, the scene in which about 6 different phone conversations are taking place all at once is very funny and beautifully choreographed, and her wearing grands. The cameo performance of John Molyneux as Gloria, formerly Graham, Millie's ex-husband, adds more hilarity, although in defence of Linda, I cannot accept her contention that my father looks more feminine than me. This story arc allows Millie's character to develop from the overbearing confidence which was shades of Maggie Smith's Countess of Grantham, showing us a more defensive, emotional side to her personality, which is further developed as the truth about who Jack was and why the two women have hated each other for some time many years ago begins to emerge. Dee, too, gradually allows us to see beneath her tough exterior, and we are invited to empathise with the vulnerable, abandoned young woman she was many years ago, and the hurt she had kept hidden inside for so long, culminating in her final touching reunion with Jack, Brian Wilson, until she greets him with "You're late," which brings the whole situation full circle. Director Barry Aspinall uses the relatively simple domestic set to its best advantage, and every actor brings experience and talent to their own role in a show which is truly a team effort. Part of the team are also to be congratulated are the stage and technical crew, and in particular the front of house team, who clearly planned and organised with incredible precision and attention to detail to make sure COVID rules were kept to and audience felt secure and safe to enjoy themselves. And enjoy yourselves we did. Thank you, Bembridge Little Theatre Club. After the last 18 months, it felt so good to be back watching such fantastic live entertainment again.
This is Den reading an article from the Island Echo. Stranded vessel recovered from Shanklin Beach and scrapped. Following the stranding of a wooden vessel off Small Hope Beach in Shanklin on Sunday, the 27th of June, local contractors instructed by the boat's owner have now finished retrieving the vessel and making the beach safe. The 3-masted yacht got into difficulties in Sandown Bay last week and ended up aground at the weekend. The boat was submerged by the tide, and there were fears that it could break up and spread debris across the area. The Isle of Wight Council inspected the beach and erected signage to warn beach users of possible pollution. The small amounts of fuel oil that escaped soon dispersed. On Tuesday afternoon, MMC Diving Services and Kevin Coglan Plant and Transport were engaged by the owner of the vessel. The operation to make the beach safe was successful, and the contractors were able to recover the yacht and debris that had fallen from it. MMC Diving Services have inspected the seabed and recovered any fragments that could be identified. A further sweep by the divers will take place later this week. The boat engine and fuel tank were both retrieved mostly intact, and there was no evidence of oil remaining on the beach and seabed. The beach is now fully open, safe to use, and all warning signs and fencing have been removed.
This is Alison, reading an article from On the Wight. Heritage Trail offers new perspective of Freshwater Bay's cultural history. A new heritage trail has been devised, allowing you to delve into the cultural history of Freshwater Bay. A new heritage trail has been produced for West Wight thanks to funding from the Isle of Wight Council's Active Travel Innovation Grant. The guide covers important historical figures from West Wight, with extra focus on Freshwater Bay, which has been an important cultural hub, especially during the Victorian period. In addition to well-known island residents Tennyson, Cameron and Hook, the guide lists numerous notable visitors from many varied fields who took great inspiration from the area. The Heritage Trail has been put together by the Bay Boutique Bed and Breakfast in Freshwater Bay, using historical research compiled by local artist Becca Cameron from Freshwater Bay Residents Association. Becca said, I've spent years researching the history of the area. As an artist myself, I've been intrigued by all the artists, writers, explorers, intellectuals and geniuses who have come here. I'm glad that my work has been used in this new guide so people can see what a fabulous culturally important area this is. Paul Mowcroft, owner of the Bay Boutique Bed and Breakfast, said putting this guide together has been fascinating. I learned so much about past visitors to the area. Freshwater Bay has a great energy during the summer months, but it's extraordinary to think what this must have been like during the Victorian era, when it was full of celebrities. You can almost feel what it must have been like by exploring the trail yourself. The Heritage Trail will be promoted via social media to inspire visitors and capture the imagination of those interested in historical and cultural travel. Councillor Jonathan Bacon, Isle of Wight Council Cabinet Member for Environment and Heritage, said, "The aim of the grant is to get people to leave their cars at home and instead use a bike or walk. This new guide will not just give tourists something new to see, but I hope it will also encourage locals to get out and gain a new perspective on familiar places and our rich social history that many do not realise exists. I'd encourage everyone to get out and see West Wight in a new light." People who complete all or part of the Heritage Trail can enter a prize draw to win items donated from island businesses by giving feedback on a short online form. Prizes include a £25 voucher for the Red Lion Freshwater, a cream tea for two at Girea House, Yarmouth, a weekend's electric bike hire for two from Wight Cycle Hire, Yarmouth, a weekend's electric bike hire for two from the Bay Boutique Bed and Breakfast, a £25 voucher for Adrian's Bike Shop Freshwater, and a limited edition print of a freshwater bay scene from island artist Maria Ward. Paul concludes, "We know what a beautiful part of the world we live in and are keen to share it with others. With many more people looking for a UK holiday this year, we want to play our part in opening up the Isle of Wight to more visitors by providing stimulating experiences in cultural tourism."
This is an article read by Sue from Island Echo. Isle of Wight councillor challenged after building larger than approved stable block. An Isle of Wight councillor has been called into the planning committee after building a stable block bigger than approved. A neighbour has objected to the retrospective plans, which has meant the application submitted by Conservative councillor Claire Mosdale will be determined by the Isle of Wight Council's planning committee instead of officers. However, officers have determined the application should be approved with conditions despite a neighbour's concerns of overdevelopment and drainage issues. The site off of Wacklands Lane, Newchurch, is used for equestrian purposes, where planning permission was granted in June 2020 to build stables with a footprint of 8 metres by 3.5 metres and a floor space of 28 metres squared. A planning statement submitted by BCM, acting on behalf of Councillor Mosdale, said the stables had been built in a different position and are now marginally bigger compared to what was approved. Planning documents, however, show the stable block now has a floor space nearly doubled than that approved to 52 metres square and measures 15.1 metres by 3.5 metres. BCM says the stable block has traditionally an unobtrusive design to fit in with the rural character of the area and will act as per the rationale of the consented scheme as a shelter for the horses. They said the stables are merely an extension to what currently exists to allow a more undercover, usable space for the applicant's horses. As well as the retrospective permission, Councillor Mosdale is seeking to add an all-weather menage which will be 40 metres by 20 metres topped with chalk and rubber chippings. Jason O'Donnell, the landowner who borders the site, has objected strongly, saying it would lead to overdevelopment and was left with the impression, following a meeting with Councillor Mosdale, that she would not undertake the required drainage works. Mr O'Donnell provided pictures of water on his land and said he fears the built-up area will create more water runoff which will seriously flood his best and driest field, rendering it unusable in the winter. He said, "When it rains, my fields that border her land flood and water then flows across my hard standing, eroding it, to my yard drainage. In the current and all prior planning for the land, the applicants have stated that drainage would be dealt with by soakaways. There are none on her land." It is argued by the BCM that the stables have soakaways that were installed by an island contractor based on the existing planning consent, but it was hard to ascertain where the water is coming from in the pictures. They said, should it be deemed necessary, a drainage condition could be included in the permission. In the report going to the Planning Committee, prepared by council officers, it is acknowledged that the stable was built larger than the approved, but said in spite of that it remains a typical agricultural, equestrian-style building located within a rural setting, which is characterised by horticulture. They said the site would not be overdeveloped as the building continues to be of a suitable size, which appears commensurate with the site and wider landscape, and thus would not be excessive or over-dominant. In relation to the drainage, officers said the development would be unlikely to increase surface water on the site or run off to the neighbouring land, and the proposed surface material for the menage would enable suitable natural drainage. The Planning Committee will determine the application at its next meeting, Tuesday the 6th of July.
This is an article from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Terry. Marker buoys will be reinstated on Isle of Wight to protect swimmers. Marker buoys are being reinstated at several island beaches this summer in a bid to protect swimmers from antisocial behaviour on the water. Work is due to start next week to install 16 marker buoys off Bembridge, Yaverland, Sandown Lake and Shanklin, and a further 4 buoys and a launching lane at Colwell and Totland Bay. The move follows a rise last summer in complaints of antisocial behaviour on the water, including jet ski use, resulting in Hampshire Police's Marine Support Unit launching Operation Wavebreaker to tackle the issues. Councillor Jonathan Bacon, the council's cabinet member responsible for beaches, said regulating safe areas for bathing would provide a welcome boost to beach safety. He said, "The mixing of powered craft among swimmers is a recipe for disaster. Beaches form an essential part of island life, supporting the local economy through tourism and jobs. We need them to be safe places that everyone can enjoy." The distinctive orange marker buoys have been bought by the Isle of Wight Council, but it's thanks to the support of local town and parish councils that the scheme has been made possible. Sandown Town Council, Lake Parish Council, Shanklin Town Council, Bembridge Parish Council and Totland Parish Council have all agreed to fund the annual installation costs as part of a 5-year partnership with the Isle of Wight Council. Councillor Bacon added, "I very much want to thank our town and parish councils for their support. We simply couldn't have done it without them. As a new council, we have been very clear that we want to work more collaboratively with our town and parish councils to bring about community improvements, and this is a great example." Though not possible this year, from 2022 the buoys will be deployed in early May and removed again in September, with the work being undertaken by local contractors Cowes Harbour Services. Ed Walker, Cowes Harbour Master, said, We are glad to be able to assist the Council with such an important project that will allow all beach users to stay safe. Earlier this year, the Council approved a beach management strategy framework which, among other actions, would look at other authorities and see whether it is feasible to implement an island-wide policy on personal watercraft.
This is Den reading an article from the Island Echo. Islanders still able to claim work from home tax relief. Islanders who have either returned to working in an office since early April or are preparing for their return can still claim the working from home tax relief and benefit from the full year's relief for 2021 to 22. Since April, almost 800,000 employees who have been working from home during the pandemic have already claimed tax relief on household-related costs, HM Revenue and Customs, HMRC, has revealed. The saving is worth up to £125 per year for each employee, and eligible workers can claim the full year's entitlement if they have been told to work from home by their employer, even if it has been for one day during the tax year. It's quick and easy to claim via HMRC's online portal. Employees can apply directly themselves and receive the full tax relief that is due. Once their application has been approved, their tax code will automatically be adjusted for the year 2021 to 22 tax year, receiving the tax relief directly through their salaries. Agents cannot use the online portal to apply on a customer's behalf. Myrtle Lloyd, HMRC's Director General for Customer Services, said, "More people are getting back to office working now, but it's not too late to apply for tax relief on household expenses if they've been working from home during the pandemic. It's quick and easy to check if you're eligible and apply online. Go to gov.uk and search Working from Home Tax Relief." Since April last year, the maximum amount employers have been able to pay tax-free without employees having to provide evidence of an increased bill was set at £6 a week. Employees who have not received the working from home expenses payment direct from their employer can apply to receive the tax relief from HMRC. Eligible customers can claim tax relief based on the rate at which they pay tax. For example, if an employed worker pays the 20% basic rate of tax and claims tax relief on £6 a week, they would receive £1.20 a week in tax relief. That's 20% of £6 a week, towards the cost of their household bills. Higher rate taxpayers would receive £2.40 a week, which is 40% of £6 a week. Over the course of the year, this means customers can reduce the tax they pay by £62.40 or £124.80 respectively. If employees were required to work from home in the 2020 to 21 tax year but did not claim for the tax relief, they have not missed out. HMRC will accept backdated claims for up to 4 years. They will receive a lump sum payment for any successful backdated claims.
This is Alison reading an article from On the Wight. Park homes for the over 45s planned next to Asda. A planning application for 7 houses was previously approved, but the applicant is now hoping to build these park homes instead. Plans for housing next to Asda in Newport have been scrapped in favour of retirement park homes. Submitted to the Isle of Wight Council, applicant Mr Perez is hoping to build 12 3-bed park homes on the corner of St George's Way and Burnt House Lane. Revised plans for 7 houses had been approved in September last year after initial permission was sought for 9. In planning documents provided by agent Geraint John Planning, it was said officers had concerns about the impact on trees and 9 was an overdevelopment of the site. The application now changes the development from houses to park homes, single-storey dwellings for those aged 45 and over. Documents for the new application say the age restriction will be enforced through an occupancy condition, as it caters for one of the Isle of Wight Council's planning policies to support the development of housing for older people. Mr. John said there was a growth in demand for housing for older people, with this site inherently appropriate for an elderly residential development. He said, given the ageing population of the island and the established demand for suitable accommodation to house this demographic, retirement park homes are considered an acceptable and desired proposed use. The Greenfield site, on the rural-urban fringe of Newport, is currently vacant, apart from some outbuildings which used to be for equestrian use. A paddock at the site will be retained. To enhance the visual screening of the retail developments, at the moment Asda and in the coming years the St George's Retail Park, native shrubs will be planted along the boundary with the supermarket. Officers' concerns about the impact on the protected trees on site have been addressed by providing a significant buffer between the perimeter trees and the homes.
Good morning everyone, this is Mike.
And this is Kate.
And we start our reading with readers' letters. And we start off that bit with the fact that a bridge is needed according to Anne Wise, an island resident. Living on the Isle of Wight is a beautiful experience, apart from the duopoly of Whitelink and Red Funnel, whose prices are extortionate and service debatable. The island needs a link, a bridge which would help with the economy of the island and the advance of a good tourist industry, which at this point needs some help. Even as a person living on the island with a travel pass, a return journey is a basic £60, some people have to live off the amount for a week. A link would improve the Isle of Wight logistic, tourism, islanders interaction. We need to look forward, not back. Look at the empty shops in Newport, Brading and Sandown. New investment and business opportunities with a link could really help.
However, Pamela Mara of Brading says the fixed link would steal our peace and beauty. A blissfully one-sided view of the benefits of a fixed link in the county press letters of the 25th of June. In euphoric acceptance of all those extra visitors with money to spend, it ignores the question of our already congested road system, the erosion of a primary joy on the island. To walk, cycle and ride horses safely in our beautiful countryside, mounting roadkill, crashes and poisonous fumes to kill our flora, fauna and population. By all means have a fixed link if you ban all but essential vehicles from entering the island. Let us keep something of the beauty and peace of the island in our rush for improvement.
David Clark from Sri Lanka asks, how are things on my former home? I have been living now for a while anyhow in Sri Lanka. We did escape the worst of the COVID misery, but things are not so good here at the moment. Being a former island resident, I try to keep up with the Isle of Wight news and am becoming worried about some of the things that I read or see. This letter is to ask how things really are now. I see that the island is now promoted, quite rightly, as a splendid destination for a staycation, but it seems that the ferries, red jet, hovercraft links are somewhat unreliable these days. Perhaps that's putting it mildly. And that's really not much use, is it? In 1950 I arrived on the island by paddle steamer. For the next 35 years or so I was travelling backwards and forwards, and I am trying hard to remember ferry breakdowns. I remember being stuck because of fog, but that is, of course, quite acceptable. I don't remember the old Cowes Chain ferry breaking down either. Usually, when things are badly managed, we can vote with our feet and just not pay again for lousy service. That is obviously not the case in the situation. To my mind, silly apologies, so used by so many institutions and individuals supposedly responsible for managing things, are simply of no use. Perhaps we actually need proper responsibility to be taken by a lot of highly paid, apparently useless people.
Councillor Charles Chapman of Ryde says that East Cowes and other road issues need sorting. I fully endorse your expose of the damage being caused by roadworks at East Cowes in the county press of 25th of June. I had occasion to visit Waitrose last week. I was absolutely aghast at what I saw. The route used to divert laden lorries off the ferries was totally unsuitable for big and heavy vehicles. Surely the highway engineers should have known the depth of covering materials used to protect water mains on these roads is not adequate for the weight. On speaking to staff at Waitrose, they confirmed that the store's business had been adversely affected. One lady who lives in East Cowes said that this was the second water main to burst since the roadworks started. I also managed to go by the main route to the car ferry, which is open to residents only. I noticed all the equipment needed to repair the road was laid up. Why has it taken so long? Why has it not been finished? There is a similar problem in Newport. The roadworks there have been going on for months. In fact, roadworks seem to be popping up all over the island. This is adding to the bewilderment of the holiday visitors who are starting to visit us in hundreds. Please, Island Roads, get your act together.
Godsill needs community centre first. That's the opinion of Mr. Derek Wood from Godsill. I write to respond to Godsill Parish Council's proposal for a disability park at Central Mead. I object profusely to this proposal. Firstly, the village already has a playground located at Newport Road, which is currently used by local children. While I appreciate there may be a longer-term need for an adapted playground for disabled children, is this a good use of village money when we are crying out for a community centre and have been for many years? I presume this proposal is being funded from the sale of the village hall. If so, this proposal should have been presented to the local community at its inception by inviting them to a meeting outlining the plans and cost implications, giving them chance to vote on the proposal. The main priority is a community centre which has access to all able-bodied and disabled. This building would be secure and of much more long-term use to the community.
Sandra Snell of Lake says that thousands got to Wembley, but parents can't see school sports. This is a copy of a letter I sent to our MP Bob Seeley and Prime Minister Boris Johnson. I am still awaiting replies. Please can you explain to me why parents cannot watch children's sports days this year, yet thousands of people can attend and watch football matches and similar, and hundreds of people can attend G7 meetings? And we noted all the dignitaries mingling without masks when we, the masses, are limited to what we can and can't do while wearing masks. It seems to me that this is double standards. I have been very compliant with government wishes, but it's a complete mockery when there appear to be these double standards. I have friends and family members who are missing out on a child's first sports day event, and children who would love their parents to see them at their sports day. This is not good enough. Please make my concerns known.
Tunnel Vision from C.E. Armstrong of Binstead. During campaigning for the recent Isle of Wight Council elections, I received an unsolicited doorstep visit from MP Bob Seeley and the Tories local in brackets unsuccessful, candidate. When asked about fixed link, Mr. Seeley stepped back and arrogantly said it would not happen for at least 20 years. Mainland hospital patients, please note. Given the current chaos of travelling on the ferries, a Victorian system in the 21st century, when I experienced a 6-hour delay on an evening sailing on June the 25th, does our MP really believe the continuation of an antiquated and unreliable mode of transport will allow the island's economic future to prosper? Wake up and smell the tunnel.
Councillor John Medland of Freshwater says we have the last chance to comment on the oil drilling plan. The threat to drill for oil at Arraton remains a live issue, due to come for a decision at the Isle of Wight Council Planning Committee in the next few months. Currently, the UK Environment Agency has a live public consultation on the potential environmental effects of the UK oil and gas application to drill. This consultation closes on July the 9th. There is an email address for information on how to comment, which is www.don'tdrillthewight.co.uk. The idea of drilling the island for its tiny reserves of toxic petrochemicals, which need to be released by probable acid stimulation in the fractured level just below our largest freshwater aquifer, introduces many environmental risks. The process of extracting the pathetic amounts of our underground fossil fuel to the surface will involve importing millions of litres of fresh water from the mainland, where there is already a water shortage, to be injected into the drilled wells mixed with hydrochloric acid and a cocktail of other chemicals. All the waste contaminated fluids, including brine and naturally occurring radioactive material, returning to the surface, will then have to be transported by many more tankers via Coppins Bridge and our ferries to specialised treatment plants on the mainland, not to mention the transport of any oil that is found. Drilling for oil creates a legacy of embedded underground infrastructure that remains in place forever. The long-term liabilities created by this pose serious questions about who pays for future environmental monitoring and clean-up operations. This is especially risky when the financial future seems so uncertain for this industry. Oil giant Shell, BP and Exxon wrote off billions of dollars of assets in 2020, and this relatively tiny 8-year-old startup looks to me particularly vulnerable. The UK Oil and Gas Group has recently authorised issuing a further 8 billion shares, valued at 0.2 pence, to fund their current operational expenditure. So please take this opportunity to comment to the Environment Agency.
This is an opinion from Jennifer Smart of Sandown, who says, one rule for Matt. Visitors turned away from St Mary's Hospital as COVID restrictions remain. That's the County Press Online on the 25th of June. If hands face space, Matt Hancock can cuddle his aide in his office. Why can't I cuddle a relative in a St Mary's Hospital ward?
Am I a cynic? Asks Gavin Rose of Binstead. With concerns being aired about the security of our personal health data being sold to third parties by the government, we learn that Baroness Dido Harding, under whose watch the massive personal data breach at Talk occurred, is thinking of applying for the position of head of NHS England. Unbelievable? Clearly not. Predictable? Yes. It's important to keep the channels open for Big Pharma to oil the wheels of the Conservative Party. Or am I being too cynical?
This is from Judith Dean of Binstead, and she's remembering Arthur Russell. I have just read Anne Grant's interesting article on Life Savings Boy Caused Unexpected Ripples. That's the County Press, 18th of June this year. Arthur Russell was a great uncle and lived in Yarmouth. He was my grandma's brother, and there was another brother, Harry, who died in the Great War. His name is on the War Memorial in Yarmouth. Arthur's mother, Charlotte Russell, kept a clipping from the Sunday Pictorial, which my cousin Russell has. Arthur moved from Yarmouth to Whaley, Lancashire, with his mother when my grandma and granddad married in 1921 and moved there. Apparently, he found work for several years at a local cotton mill, probably Billington. His first wife was Susanna Lord, née Holden. They were married in 1939. She had 3 children by her first husband. During the war, he was a fitter in an ammunition factory. After Susie's death in 1959, he married another widow, Alice Lond, in 1965. He worked in a stone quarry where he developed a lung disease. He died in 1971. Upsettingly for my grandma, there was an insurance dispute and his body was exhumed. Pneumoconiosis was confirmed and Alice received insurance money. Arthur had no children of his own. The Cecil Cornish mentions Mother Mabel Cornish was a sister to Arthur's mother, so Cecil and Arthur were cousins. The family were living in London at this time, so they must have been visiting his grandparents, the Harveys, in Newport, and also visiting Arthur's mother in Yarmouth. Cecil, full name Herbert Cecil Cornish, died in 1988. He was married twice. My cousin Russell, who lives in Wales, is one who has researched the family tree, but he doesn't have much further information. Arthur was an excellent swimmer, and my cousin believes he won swimming competitions.
More cameras, says G. Pollard of Shanklin. There are reports the camera that caught out Matt Hancock's extracurricular activities, funded by the taxpayer, has been disabled. Why? I would have thought the case for more, not less surveillance tech to catch out slipper, hypocritical Tory toads was well made.
And now we're moving on to Wight Memories, and this article is A Boom Time for Island Country Music by John Hannam. The 70s was a boom time for island country music, and in particular for 2 locally born singers, Brian Munro and Ian Attrell. They both had silver disc albums on Tom Taylor's Peacock label that were recorded in his Newport studio in Medina Avenue. They were so popular on the island's live music circuit and were regulars at Ash's Ponderosa Roadhouse. Ian, whose first island band was the Rustlers, was influenced by stars of the day like Frankie Lane and Big Bill Campbell. He would play at the local cinema on talent nights at the Medina Newport and the Commodore Ride. The Rustlers, who included Ron Fairweather and Pete Cheek, played at local hotels and pubs. Ian also played in the Kentucky Bluebirds. Ian's career has been even more remarkable because he went blind in the 60s. Despite that tragedy, he has never lost his sense of fun. I can remember going to his home in 1977 to interview him. When I left at 10:30 p.m, he told me he was off to finish digging his garden. He added, "It makes no difference to me." His life changed when he had to leave the island to head for Hull, where there was a job for a blind person in social services. He did take his guitar, but had no plans to continue his singing career. One night in Hull Country Music Club, he was persuaded to sing, and he was back in business. That led to gigs in many Yorkshire clubs and an appearance on Radio Humberside. Despite being told he would never be accepted as just a country singer in noisy northern clubs, he took up the challenge and proved any doubters wrong.
Joe Longthorne became one of his fans, and he even mentions Ian in his autobiography. Ian returned to the island to continue social work for the blind, and he immediately was in demand for local gigs. Then came his debut album, which proved a complete sellout. It contained well-known country hits, plus 3 of his own compositions, including the very popular Through the Eyes of Buddy, about his guide dog, and Patty, a personal tribute to his very supportive wife. Ian continued to sing for many years, and then he changed direction to perform in local churches. I asked Ian on one occasion if the loss of his sight had affected his singing career. I expected a funny line and was not disappointed. "It's probably helped," he said. "I can't see the pain on the audience's face anymore." Brian Munro was inspired by a live Oh Boys show in Plymouth, and after his national service came home to Cowes and played in the local Scout skiffle group. He then played guitar in the Medina City's jazz band. He formed his own trio and appeared on Southern TV's Homegrown, compared by Dickie Davies. Being a Cowes postman and starting work at 4 a.m. was not an ideal lifestyle, and he did fall asleep on stage on one occasion. This led him to take a break, but not for long. He made a comeback to help form Union Pacific, still regarded as the island's greatest country band of all time. They were tipped for national success and recorded a demo album which found favour with the BBC, and work was promised. Brian, Alan Packer, Tom Taylor, Ken Ferris and Jack Richards used their holidays to take quality mainland work and recorded an album at the Delane Lee CTS Studios, Wembley. Brian was embarrassed when their American manager Mike Wilkinson told bookers they were an authentic USA group. They were a hit in Wandsworth Prison, Ascot Racecourse and London's Nashville Room. With major people in the business behind them, big time seemed assured. There was not a happy ending when Wilkinson's father pulled his son's allowance.
These problems off stage, which were nothing to do with the group members, brought a swift end to their dreams. Demoralised, they came back and played for a few more years on the island before breaking up to form or join other groups. Brian had one glorious night. He was playing in a local country trio at the Clarendon Hotel, Shanklin, during the 1970 Afton Down Pop Festival. And at a party afterwards, a guy came up to tell Brian he was interested in him singing Merle Haggard songs. The unknown admirer was Chris Christopherson. The very same night, Chris and his group, returning from Afton, did an impromptu set of songs he was having a job getting published, like Me and Bobby McGee, The Good Times and Help Me Make It Through the Night. Not long afterwards, he became a world superstar. To celebrate that special night, Brian recorded Bobby McGee on his debut album. It became an album of the week on Radio Solent. Since those days, Brian has been in various local groups and for 38 years was in the Goose Island Syncopators. Only the lockdown stopped them playing. I can still remember a very exciting night at the Ponderosa in 1977. They were both performing at a local charity evening. As the compere, I was on one major surprise. On behalf of Tom Taylor, I had arranged for Brian to come on and present Ian with a silver disc. The only other holder of a Peacock Records silver disc was actually Brian himself. Both were so well deserved. Now we learn about the iconic event which brings together world champions, families and club sailors. And it's celebrating the Round the Island Yacht Race's 90th year. Organised by the much respected Island Sailing Club, the Round the Island has always been one of the UK's largest participating sport events and regularly attracts more than 1,500 boats and thousands of sailors. One of the unique attractions of the race is its even-handedness and the opportunity for Olympic and world champion sailors to compete on the same racecourse with amateurs, families and club sailors of all ages. The current monohull record is held by Mike Slade on ICAP. Leopard, who in the near-perfect conditions of 2013 posted an elapsed time of 3 hours, 43 minutes and 50 seconds. The multi-hull class, introduced in 1961, generally achieves even faster times, as shown in 2017 when Ned Collier, Wakefield's Concise 10, flew round in just 2 hours, 22 minutes and 23 seconds. The original idea for the Island Sailing Club's Round the Island race came from member Major Cyril Windler. In 1930 he suggested a handicap race around the island which could cater for smaller boats, those in the category of 5 to 25 tons. This first race took place in 1931 with 25 entries, and it was one of the smaller boats which won. The successful skipper, Peter Brett, competed in a 22-foot Cornish fishing boat, Mary Conceit. The top trophy then, as now, was the gold Roman Bowl. There was drama in the 1933 race when the leading yacht Isaac Bell's Rosemary 4 lost her mainsail just before the finish line, but still beat her rival Feliz by 46 seconds. Meanwhile, Dr. R.T. Cook's 32-year-old cutter Enid sprang a leak and sank off Allen Bay. The Right Honourable Sir Edward Heath was a keen supporter and won the Round the Island race 4 times, 3 of them in consecutive years. In the early 1970s, on Morning Cloud 2 and Morning Cloud 3 in 1980, he took the top trophy. Once more in Morning Cloud 4, boat builder Jeremy Rogers won 3 times in 2002, 2003 and 2006, all on Rosina of Bewley, his own Contessa 26. The Golden Roman Bowl has been won twice by women. Helen Tobin on Barbar in 1954 and Julia Dane on Glass Onion in 1982.
Now we move to my view, when one of a panel of columnists take it in turns to give their take on life on the Isle of Wight. This week's columnist is Malcolm Mime, who says, try not to score any own goals in the politics game. The Euros football competition is reaching an exciting climax, but not as exciting a climax as the recent battle for control of the Isle of Wight Council. Steve Hastings thought his Tory team would find their way to victory, but Laura P.C. Wilcox gathered the independents together and scored a last-minute winner. New Independent Administration 1, Old Tory Administration 0. The win puts the Independent Administration through to the next round, where they face the people of the Isle of Wight. This next game will last 4 years. And if the new independent administration are to go further than 2025, they will need to score at least 1 goal and hope they don't score any own goals. The group have wasted no time in publishing their post-election manifesto, which comprises of 6 promises, or 6 shots at goal if you like. Here are the 6 promises with my response after each.
Funding. Spending and investing as much council money on the island as is possible. This appears to be a nothing kind of promise, of course. Isle of Wight council money should be spent and invest on the island. Where else are they going to spend it? Chipping Sodbury? This promise can't fail, but if the new council think they have gotten themselves an early goal, they can think again. Offside, no goal. Transport. Finding a permanent working solution to Floating Bridge 6, if appropriate, by scrapping and replacing it. We all know that Floating Bridge 6 isn't fit for purpose, and we are fed up with good money being thrown after bad, a vehicle crossing in no longer needed. This is the 2020s, not the 1920s, when a chain ferry was needed to take cars across the river because it took 6 days to drive round the River Medina. It's time to go back to just having a passenger launch, which will actually make the council money rather than cost them hundreds of thousands. Any fudging, and it really will be an own goal.
Housing. Gaining greater control of the planning system and prioritising truly affordable housing for island residents. This is another nothing kind of promise in an attempt to score an easy goal. The planning system follows guidelines from various parliamentary acts, none more so than the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, so there will be no gaining control. Developers have no interest in building affordable properties, and with no money in the pot for the council to build their own properties, this will come to nothing. Offside again, no goal. Health. Placing the health and well-being of residents at the centre of all activity and prioritising dealing with health inequalities and the resulting poverty, which has been highlighted during the pandemic. What does putting residents at the centre of all activity actually mean, and how do we possibly monitor it? It's the sort of statement that looks good on paper but has no substance. Yet another attempt at an easy goal for the council, but again it's not hitting the net. No goal.
Education. Working with local communities to maintain and ensure appropriate local school provision. The shrewd Laura Peachy-Wilcox hasn't made the same mistake as both of her leaders' predecessors. David, top 10% in the country, Pew, and Dave, 25% Ofsted outstanding Stewart, when it comes to the subject of education. Laura has made no outlandish promises about results, instead just promising to provide local buildings for education. Laura knows that most parents are far more interested in convenience than results. The new independent administration has already suspended the closure of Chillerton and Rookley Primary School as a crowd pleaser. But that doesn't constitute scoring a goal in my book. Just doing nothing will see the promise fulfilled, so again it's no goal. Regeneration. Treating COVID recovery as integral to everything, including supporting the regeneration of our town centres and aiming to ensure there is free parking provision in all towns. Playing the COVID recovery card is an easy point scorer for the council, as is promising a little bit of free parking and offering support for the regenerating of our town centres. But high streets across the land are failing. So the new Isle of Wight council officer in charge of regeneration, Julie Jones-Evans, hasn't got a chance of regenerating ours. Using the word supporting regeneration rather than promising regeneration is yet another wishy-washy policy, and that doesn't score a goal. In summary, this council have made no tangible promises regarding finance, housing, health, education or regeneration. So it all comes down to sorting the floating bridge debacle. Laura and co now have 4 years to get it right and advance in the competition.
We now move on to additional news items. Thanks for all the jabs. Riverside is set to shut as the Isle of Wight nears 200,000 mark. It looks like the beginning of the end for Newport's Riverside Centre COVID vaccination hub. Volunteers who have manned the hub have had their shifts curtailed by the Solent NHS Trust soon after it reached the 50,000 jab landmark. And yesterday the county press saw a letter telling volunteers to prepare for closure of the centre by September. Meanwhile, the Isle of Wight's vaccination programme has been described by the NHS as one of the best in the country, as it fast approaches the 200,000 jabs landmark. The island's vaccination programme is running incredibly well in terms of vaccination rates. The island is one of the best in the country for that, said a trust source. Clearly there are not as many people booking appointments at the Riverside Centre, so in response to that, the number of days open have been adjusted accordingly. As of this coming Sunday, the centre's days of opening will be staggered throughout July, open for 2 days a week principally, with no plans announced yet for August and beyond. It has been a Herculaneum effort by the Riverside Centre, run by the Southampton-based trust, alongside the efforts of GP practices and community pharmacies, to have delivered a vaccination programme on a scale never seen before. At the time of going to press, a total of 189,708 jabs had been given to island residents, of which 103,525 received their first dose and 86,183 their second. The centre has employed 190 volunteers to help marshal the programme. Community Action Isle of Wight has played a leading role in recruiting and coordinating volunteers there. A trust spokesman said, "Thanks to all the volunteers, nurses, GPs and everyone who have worked behind the scenes. The NHS COVID vaccination programme has been hugely successful. Everyone on the island who has played their part can rightly be proud. We are now in the final sprint. I would encourage all remaining adults aged 18 and over to come forward to get their first and second doses to help the Isle of Wight community beat this virus." The Riverside Centre introduced a walk-in service last week, which worked well as a more efficient way of getting more people vaccinated quickly. We are looking at putting more of them on. It's a matter of adjusting the way we provide the service to meet demand and do what is required to get people vaccinated, the Solent NHS source explained. We monitor demand and consider how we adjust the service to meet it. Some may prefer a walk-in service. We're looking at doing more of them so we can get as many through the door as possible. There's been a huge amount of work going on, not just at the Riverside. It's also about the GPs and community pharmacies. The government, in partnership with Public Health England and the NHS, have yet to make decisions on a vaccine booster programme in response to any new COVID variant. Solent NHS Trust has also scotched any suggestion the Riverside Centre is opening fewer days due to supply issues of AstraZeneca or Pfizer.
Now, this is something which is on pretty well everybody's mind, I think. Sorting out the floating bridge is a big priority. This is by Laura Peachy-Wilcox. The Alliance Group has now been in charge of the Isle of Wight Council for 6 weeks. As I predicted in my last column for the county press, the most important work in these first weeks has been to find out what has been going on under the previous administration and to open the closed doors. While it may look quiet from the outside, the work has been constant as we have been digging down deep to give us the basis to make major changes and improvements in the coming months. We are shortly going to be launching a consultation on a new island plan, a key aim of which will be to bring housing numbers down to acceptable levels while also ensuring that we build our own residents and communities. As part of this process, there will be a proper consultation with residents and groups. We will also be making decisions very soon about the floating bridge. The current unacceptable situation has gone on far too long, and we will take firm and decisive steps to resolve it. Such ongoing work has to sit alongside issues that arise day by day. The events in East Cowes last week are something else. Unacceptable. I have been knocking heads together to put measures in place, including having an emergency plan to prevent the sort of disruption that we have seen affecting local residents and visitors. In the midst of all this activity, I was very pleased to visit one of our amazing local businesses, Rapanui. We sometimes forget that local firms can achieve if they are nurtured and supported. The Alliance Administration is committed to supporting our local businesses, both to help the journey out of the pandemic, but also to see more businesses achieving this sort of success. As part of this, we now have a university centre at the Isle of Wight College, which can help drive and support such change. It's amazing what you can do when you take the politics out of local government and just get on with the job.
Lucy Morgan reports that the whale chine rubbish has been finally cleared. After nearly a year, fly-tipped rubbish has finally been removed from a West Wight beauty spot. As previously reported by the county press, dumped mattresses, garden waste and plastic chairs have been blighting whale chine off Military Road. In March, some of the rubbish was cleared from an adjacent car park. However, it has taken almost 12 months to get rid of items thrown into the chine itself because it is privately owned. The rubbish, which also included piping and clay plant balls, was photographed by Islander Lisa Davis, who shared her pictures with us and reported the issue to the council. On seeing Lisa's pictures in the county press, another islander told us the rubbish had previously been reported and had already been there for months. Finally, on Wednesday, a joint response by Chale Parish Council and the newly elected Chale, Knighton and Shorewell councillor Claire Critchison meant the waste was finally brought out. Safety ropes had to be used by those involved because it had been thrown so deep into the chine. It was taken away by waste contractor Amy. Green Party member and Vice Chair of the Isle of Wight Council, Councillor Critchison, said it was a difficult and dangerous job. She asked islanders to be responsible when it comes to getting rid of rubbish. Speaking to the county press, Councillor Critchison said, "I urge anyone needing to dispose of goods to do it in the responsible way through the waste disposal facilities available, so that people and wildlife are not put at harm from these thoughtless acts. Residents and visitors should be able to enjoy our island year-round without having to see unnecessary fly tipping left by the minority."
Chainsaw incident, a nightmare on Union Street. This is the moment a passer-by took a chainsaw into the street to face down a man causing disturbance in Ryde on Tuesday. A man had been shouting and swearing, according to eyewitnesses, and started to smash up a Mini parked on Union Street. As a crowd gathered to watch, one observer decided to take action. Holding a chainsaw, he went out into the local road with it, towards the man. The Hampshire Constabulary Armed Response Unit soon turned up. The man who had been causing the disturbance was taken into the police van. Miles Bullock, who works in Union Street, said, "He started attacking a Mini with his belt buckle and did quite a lot of damage. He was also sitting down in the street, holding up the traffic, talking about Winston Churchill, shouting and swearing. It was all a bit eventful." A spokesperson for Hampshire Constabulary said on Wednesday, "We were called at 7:12 p.m. with reports of a disturbance in Union Street Ryde, during which damage was caused to a car. A man was stopped and arrested on Ryde Esplanade. The 46-year-old was arrested on suspicion of common assault and criminal damage."
Homes and a pub were hit by flash flooding. Homes and a venue were hit by flooding and overflowing sewage this week following the torrential downpour which began on Monday night. In one instance, a local councillor came to the rescue after a resident of Sandown took to social media to request assistance after her home was flooded. Helen McMahon's house on Sandown's Fairway was flooded with sewage during heavy rain through Monday evening and Tuesday morning. Councillor Adrian Whittaker of the Island Independent Network diverted traffic until police arrived to shut off entry to the area. He said, "I arrived at around midnight after seeing a social media post. I attempted to locate sandbags, but there weren't any in either Sandown or Lake, something I'll be addressing at the next Lake Parish Council meeting. I feel sorry for residents along the fairway as there was a smell of sewage and one resident's hot tub and garage were ruined by overflowing sewage. Dyno Rod was called to the scene to try to fix the drainage problems. Southern Water also arrived in Sandown at around 2 a.m. Another victim was the Old Village pub in Bembridge, which was hit hard as the town's high street became submerged in water. Island Roads removed 24,000 litres of water and road grit from the pub's cellar, with locals aiding landlord Jay Chapman and his team. Jay said a number of locals and staff stayed through the night on Monday and into the early hours of Tuesday to bail water out. The drains couldn't cope with the amount of water, and with foul running into fresh, it became run like a river. We had only recently finished getting everything ready for a full reopening and were looking to open everything again on July the 19th. But that dream has been shattered. Thankfully, our backyard festival remains operational. A Southern Water spokesman said the Isle of Wight received a month's average rain on Monday. This has caused hydraulic overload to our network and surface drains.
Police blasted after assault trial collapses. A serving police officer who derailed a trial by refusing to give evidence against his attacker was told his actions have brought disrepute to the Hampshire Constabulary. The Crown Prosecution Service, that's the CPS, requested the case against an island man accused of assaulting an emergency worker, PC Michael Godley, in September 2019 be discontinued, with no evidence offered, and that the judge enter a formal not guilty verdict. Paul Fairley, prosecuting at the Isle of Wight Crown Court, argued the policeman booked his holiday to recover from the trauma of the incidents in which he saw a colleague stabbed, and that he was allegedly spat at and had refused to change the dates to give evidence against the suspect. At the Isle of Wight Crown Court last week, Recorder Paul Garlick initially refused the application, demanding a full explanation from the CPS. He said, "Are the CPS seriously inviting the court to be manipulated by an officer who prefers to go on holiday rather than pursuing the charge?" This is an allegation of an assault on an emergency worker. The complainant is the officer who now refuses to give evidence. That's just appalling, an abuse. The next day, the judge was handed a letter of explanation from the CPS in which the reviewing lawyer highlighted the perceived impact giving evidence would have on the officer's mental health. Mr. Fairley told the court that given the circumstances, the CPS did not wish to force the issue, as the decision to back PC Godley had been made by Craig Dibden, the Assistant Chief Constable for the Hampshire Constabulary. The judge said, with no realistic prospect of the defence agreeing to the officer's evidence being read unchallenged, PC Godley's attendance was required. However, Recorder Garlick reluctantly acceded to the application and entered a formal not guilty verdict, but not without blasting the CPS, the force and the officer in question. The judge said, literally months of notice had been given to PC Godley so he could rearrange his leave. Of course, when any police officer is assaulted when on duty, it is a traumatic experience for that officer. I do not, however, accept that Assistant Chief Constable Dibden has the necessary expertise to opine that honouring PC Godley's leave is important for his proposed post-traumatic health. It was not appropriate for him to express an opinion such as that. The court has been driven to one conclusion. The trial has been derailed. In my judgment, this case has been seriously mishandled by the CPS and by the Hampshire Constabulary. There has been an element of neglect of duty by PC Godfrey in refusing to attend to give evidence. I accept he may well have been traumatised, but police officers up and down the country may have to make alternative arrangements for their personal lives in order to carry out their duties and give evidence before the court. I regret to say PC Godley has put his own interest before his duty as a serving police officer and the interests of criminal justice. The charge of assaulting an emergency worker was created precisely to protect such persons as PC Godley. However, PC Godley has decided he will carry out a course of conduct he must have known would derail his trial. This is conduct which has brought disrepute to the reputation of the Hampshire Constabulary.
The Isle of Wight College has been granted the title of University Centre Isle of Wight by the Department of Education. It is in support of its history of delivering higher education courses in collaboration with university partners. University-level courses have been offered for more than 15 years in engineering, early years, teacher education, computing, business and creative industries. The new title means further expanded opportunities for those who wish to study locally, said the college. The undergraduate provision will be at the college's site in Newport and at the CECAMM Centre at Whippingham's Island Technology Park. Principal of the college, Debbie Lavin, said, "I am delighted that the good work which the college has undertaken for many years in the area of higher education has been acknowledged by the title University Centre for the Island. This will allow the college to continue to develop its higher education programmes in order to meet the needs of many more students seeking to secure these qualifications." Professor Paul Hayes, Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the University of Portsmouth, who supported the college's application to the Department of Education and works in partnership with the college to provide full-time and part-time courses, said, "The college, with the support of the University of Portsmouth, is a key supplier of higher education on the island. We are working with the college to develop and broaden their higher education offer, and the new designation and associated branding, we believe, will strengthen the higher level offer on the island.
Remembering Gordon. Motorcyclists came out in their numbers to honour a man who died in a tragic motorcycle accident on the island last year. A charity memorial ride took place on Saturday in honour of Gordon Endler, who died in a crash near Whitwell on July the 1st last year. The event in aid of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Air Ambulance, which attended the crash that day, saw motorcycle enthusiasts travel a circular route from the former Newport Football Club ground, which started at noon, to Freshwater Bay. The route took them along the military road to Black Gang, then back toward Newport via the accident site and Rookley. Riders from the mainland took part alongside many islanders who knew Gordon.
Now, this is the end of the second part of the Talking News, so it is goodbye from Kate.
And it's goodbye from Mike. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Now, here's a little extra for you all. The In Touch programme follows. Further education support, Braille versus assistive technology. A study by the Vision Impairment Centre for Teaching and Research at the University of Birmingham and the Thomas Pocklington Trust identified key challenges experienced by blind and visually impaired people when they moved on to further education. It also found that many did not gain quality employment, despite earning qualifications in line with the general population. And is assistive technology making the learning and usage of Braille more scarce? We want to hear your views on this. Email intouch@bbc.co.uk. We get things started by talking to Anna, a Braille teacher and personal tutor from Sense College, Loughborough. I must also tell you that there is no scaffolding news this week. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Tonight, is the boom in assistive technology turning out to be the bane of Braille? We'll explore whether things like smart speakers and the ever-growing use of synthetic speech are leaving the use of Braille as a minority sport and maybe even killing it off altogether. But first, one of the biggest ever studies of its kind has revealed some of the barriers faced by people who are blind or partially sighted when it comes to accessing further and higher education. The report, carried out by the Thomas Pocklington Trust and Birmingham University, tracked 82 students in England over a period of 11 years and found a significant lack of support in many colleges and universities, leading to 1 in 3 people failing to find a job even though they had the right qualifications. Well, Tara Chataway is from the Thomas Pocklington Trust, so talk us through the key findings.
We found that whilst some of the students did have some very good experiences, that there were barriers on every step of the way. So for further education, there are barriers for mainstream education in particular rather than sixth form college. So that's through accessing specialist support, accessing equipment and accessing accessible technology. Then through into university, there's a brilliant grant called Disabled Students Allowance, which all the students said really helped them through their studies. But there were massive barriers in actually accessing that. It's very complicated. You have to fill out several different forms that at the time of this study were not accessible. There were Word documents, and the Student Loans Company is now addressing that. Then there were issues in terms of, because it's a low incidence disability, sometimes it's specialist equipment that students need to access and specialist support. And the way that DSA is organised means that many students with vision impairment struggle to access that specialist technology and often will start university and then find that their support isn't in place because there isn't the staff out there And again, that's the way that DSA is organised. So we've heard from students in the study and through the work we do that complete their first semester at university without any support in place because of delays in the DSA
so they're
process.
actually behind right from the start. Really.
Right from the start, yes.
We'll come back to you about what we can do about some of these things, but let's talk to a couple of students about the experience they've had. George has just finished his second year studying at university. We're not going to say which one because George still has to complete his third year. But George, I mean, how has it been so far? Because you have had a number of problems, haven't you?
It's a mixed bag, to be perfectly frank. You get the tutors that are well aware of the situation, and you get the tutors, from my experience, that either don't care, don't read, or do not understand, which is a very big problem when you are at university and you're studying a degree.
Do you mean that it's visual impairment they don't understand? They don't understand what the difficulties are?
True. They do not understand. You go into university and you're promised the world, which is great, especially if you want to academically achieve. And unfortunately, when it doesn't come out as what it's supposed to be, all of a sudden you're now several steps behind everybody else. I mean, this year alone, I'll just take my last semester, there was not any physical resources, so to speak, for me to use until about week 10. And I have 12 weeks in semester 2. And when you get to about week 10 and you haven't got any resources and you've got your exams and coursework due, you sort of just think to yourself, well, don't know how I'm going to do this.
And when you say resources, this is material mainly in a form that you can read? Is that what we're talking?
Yeah, I'm talking about the material that's used within the classroom. So the lecturer's doing whatever they're doing, but if you can't see it and what they're annotating at the time, because there is a real value, I believe anyway, there's a real value between when the lecturer is speaking and what they're doing on the board. And even if you have that beforehand, that's great. That's one barrier achieved. But if you can't see what they're doing, you're missing out very key bits of information.
Presumably you complained.
Yes, I did.
What happened?
Mean, I sent off my complaint. There was an issue. They originally told me it was going to be done and dusted by, I think, April the 30th. It then took them another month, and then I received my complaint back, which was a very difficult read on many accounts, because at the start, the way in which the complaint process do this, you either have your complaint justified, partly justified, or not justified at all. And through the entirety of the response that I was given from the university, it's not actually clear if my complaint was at all justified. And I've had to ask it to be pushed up further. So it's now on level 2, sadly.
One of the things that emerges from the report that we're featuring is the high dropout rate at university. You are carrying on, you're persevering. Was that a difficult decision?
Oh, yeah, no, without a shadow of a doubt, this year I wanted to pack it in. I'm not going to lie. Because next year is my third and final. I'll be doing my thesis, and I'll be doing my essentially artifact that we have to produce. And if it's going to be a repeat of second year, I am very worried in my ability to achieve.
Let me bring in Kaya. Kaya, you did drop out of university because of the lack of support, I think. I mean, why? What, in a nutshell, what happened to you?
So I decided to study at a campus university, as everything is nearby, which is really helpful for someone who's visually impaired. I was studying business with marketing, and unfortunately, because everything was online, you had to access, and when the website of the universities is not accessible at all, it's really difficult. So we had to upload our assignments onto the university website. And when you upload your assignment, it doesn't load onto a new page, or you don't receive a message saying that this has been successfully uploaded. They wouldn't let me resubmit, and they said I would have to redo the whole of my first year. and I decided to leave the university.
So you didn't know that this had not been, you felt that you'd uploaded it successfully, but nobody told you that this hadn't actually been the case?
No.
And was there no help available? Because presumably you
No.
knew you were struggling a bit with uploading it. There was no one you really felt you could ask to help?
I actually called the receptionist because that was the only person available, and they said we're not allowed to help students upload their assignments.
You've opted for the Open University. How is that working out?
It is fundamentally better. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And what's been really good about the Open University, right at the beginning of the year, my lecturers called me and they said, we understand you have a disability. Can you let us know what size font and layout you need for your handouts? We want to help you as much as possible. And when I submit my assignments at the Open University, I receive an email saying this assignment has successfully been uploaded.
Tara Chataway, these are very concerning examples. How common are those? How typical are the kind of things that George and Kaya have been telling us?
From the longitudinal study, Lost in Transitions, it found that some of the students had dropped out. I think 3 of the 7 young people that still hadn't found employment by the end of this study had dropped out of university because of these kind of issues. Through our student support service, we're also supporting students. We're supporting another student at the moment who has dropped out after her first term because of the lack of support at university. We've supported students through trying to get exams accessible who've had to resit exams, push their exams back, and the impact that it has on the students is quite phenomenal in terms of the stress levels. It also means that if you're constantly having to chase your work, make sure things are accessible, resit your exams, sit your exams in the summer, it also limits your opportunity to engage with other parts of university life in terms of socialising, work experience. So the knock-on effect, and it's that financial knock-on effect as well for some of those who are having to redo years or drop out while still having to pay accommodation, etc.
Tara, there's already anti-discrimination law. There has been for well over 20 years, which should prevent this kind of thing. And you'd expect universities of all places to be somewhere where these laws would be properly observed, an academic environment. What's going wrong and how can it be changed?
Well, I think for some, there are some universities that are brilliant. We have spoke to some students where universities have just done amazing things. There's a guy who's recently graduated in his archaeology degree, and the university were fantastic. They put all sorts of things in place, so it can be done. I think sometimes universities just don't know what to do, and they don't reach out to ask for advice and for guidance, and they assume that what they've put in place is adequate when it's not. And sometimes I think it's about sitting down and actually listening to the students and saying, okay, we don't know what to do. And so then they don't, and they don't reach out to organisations such as Thomas Pocklington Trust and others for advice and guidance.
Just one quick point, they almost all have student disability advisors. Aren't they the ones who perhaps who individual lecturers who might be struggling should go to?
Yeah, they should, because there should be a plan in place. But sometimes through the complaints that go through the universities, the university, once we've actually spoken to them, have put their hands up and said, we just didn't know what to do.
Tara Chataway, thank you very much indeed. And also thanks to George and Kaya. Do let us know your thoughts on this and the education system and the effect you think it's having. Is it failing blind and partially sighted people? You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk. Now, when Louis Braille invented the reading system that took his name almost 300 years ago, it's unarguable that it radically enhanced the lives of some blind people, and I'd count myself as one of them. But it's also true that Braille is a complicated system to learn, it takes great sensitivity of touch, and it's only mastered comfortably by a pretty small proportion of the visually impaired population. And ever since well before the turn of this century, other developments, digital technology, synthetic speech, smart speakers, have opened up many other ways of getting information when you're blind. And although to some this will seem almost heretical, the idea regularly gets mooted that perhaps Braille has had its day. Strangely, it's an argument we've rarely examined on In Touch, so maybe it's time we did. Anna Janicki teaches Braille and assistive technology at Sense College, Loughborough, and she's one of those who thinks this subject should be opened up for discussion. And she's recently written an article aimed at doing exactly that. Anna, first of all, a few facts. I mean, roughly what percentage of blind people actually do read Braille in the UK?
I think it's around 7% approximately, which isn't, like you said, that is a small number. And I think if you also add the fact that 50% of those with sight loss have additional needs, we're looking at 43% who potentially may not be able to access Braille because of the complicated nature of learning.
And those who do use it, what do they mainly use it for? I mean, they're all reading books, or are there other reasons why people may use it?
I think there was a recent study that showed that people tend to use it for three main purposes. So for practical things and functional things like labelling, then they use it for reading non-fiction, newspapers, magazines. Very rare. It's not as prevalent for people to use Braille to read fiction books. They tend to use audio books.
So why are we even discussing whether Braille can survive? After all, no one sane is debating whether print will survive.
I think I'm sane. At least I hope I am. I'm not saying that print won't survive. However, I do think that there will be a time in the future, however many years in the future, I don't know, where technology will take over from print. So books will still survive, but I don't think they will be in the tangible physical form. I think they will be done more read using technology.
But to get back specifically to Braille, as things are at the moment, haven't digital developments actually enhanced the usefulness of Braille? You know, it can be produced much more quickly than it could and without bulky books and paper. So that should make it easier and more popular to use, shouldn't it?
You would think that Braille technology would make Braille more available to others, apart from the 7%. But this recent study showed that there were actually 3 barriers to the learning of Braille. One of them was the promotion of Braille. The second one was age. And I would also add additional needs in there. And the third one was that technology matched or surpassed what Braille could actually do. And the majority of people in that report felt that Braille was declining because of technology. And only 16% actually owned a Braille display, because the rest of the study found Braille technology to be too expensive. Mm-hmm. So I think you're right. I think Braille can survive if it's used through technology, but I think the technology has to be so much cheaper than it is now, because it's, if you compare a Braille note taker or a Braille display with an iPad, they can do the same thing, but at a fraction of the cost.
So what you're saying is that nowadays there are so many other ways to get information, and that Braille is a bit clunky for trying to do it that way on its own, that there are other ways, audio, ordinary audio, synthetic speech, etc.
In order for Braille to survive, my view is, and it is just my view, that we need to look at Braille and maybe reimagine it a little. I think when you introduced the fact that Louis Braille developed this form of reading and writing, to me, he was a revolutionary. He was somebody that was way ahead of the others of his time, and he's done this fantastic thing. But I think perhaps now we need to be thinking about how Braille can be modernised a little, simplified a little, so that those people who have additional needs, the 43% who can't learn Braille, could learn Braille.
So how long has Braille got, do you think?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to put a date on it. 50 years, maybe 100 years before technology completely takes over. And if it's not caught up, I'm not sure. I think the numbers will probably keep reducing as the years go on.
Well, 50 years will see me out, but
Me too.
be very interesting to see what other people feel about that. Anna Janicki, thank you very much indeed. We really like your views on whether Braille is coming to the end of its useful life. And if it isn't, what does it need to make it used by more people? Among future plans, we're going to be discussing becoming a new parent when you're blind or visually impaired, and we'd love to hear your experiences of that. Did you face any particular difficulties of caring for a newborn posed by your visual impairment? Do let us know how much help was available and how much help did you think you needed. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk, or you can leave messages with your comments on 01618 836 1338. And you can also go to our website, bbc.co.uk/in touch, where you can download tonight's and many other previous editions of the programme. From me, Peter Wight, producer Beth Hemmings and studio manager Jonathan Esp, goodbye.